Good evening, Love Bay family. Welcome to the Mental Health Hour and tonight's very first She Speaks episode, where we amplify the voices of women shifting the narrative on healing, identity, and mental wellness. I'm your host, Felicia Fischhoff, registered psychotherapist and founder of Rooted in Resilience Psychotherapy and Wellness. And I am so excited to open this new series with a powerful, timely conversation on a topic that so many of us deeply need: moving from resilience to rest. Joining me tonight is the phenomenal, and I mean phenomenal, Simone Donaldson, a trailblazer in the mental health field and someone I deeply respect and admire. Simone is the CEO and founder of Agape Lens Consulting and Therapy and has over 15 years of experience serving racialized communities through therapy, consulting, and anti-racist education. She's a 2025 Local Distinguished Social Worker Awardee and was named one of Canada's top 100 Black women to watch in 2024. Her impact speaks volumes. She's been featured in Elle Magazine, Yahoo Mail, and the Toronto Black Film Festival, and is a contributing author to the groundbreaking Canadian text Afrocentric Social Work. Simone is in high demand as a corporate consultant and facilitator, offering anti-racism training, leadership coaching, healing circles, and workplace wellness support. But at the heart of her work is this truth: healing, rest, and purpose go hand in hand. In tonight's episode, Moving from Resilience to Rest, Simone will guide us through the 7 types of rest we all need and share what it means to embrace a version of resilience that leads not to burnout, but to restoration, growth, and alignment with who we truly are. But before we dive in, please note, this show is for education and empowerment purposes only. It is not, and I mean not, a substitute for seeking professional therapy or medical advice. If you or someone you know is struggling, we encourage you to seek support from a licensed mental health professional in your area. And for those listening live, our chat is open. We'd love to hear from you. Share your reflections, questions, and takeaways throughout the episode. So tell your aunties, your uncles, your sons, your daughters, cousins, and neighbors, because this is a conversation the whole village needs. Grab your tea, settle in, and let's begin this much needed conversation. Simone, welcome to the
Hey,
Mental Health Hour, girl.
hi,
So
thank
glad to
you
have
so
you.
much.
You're
Oh my God,
welcome.
that
How
was
are
such a,
you? Thank you
I
for
am good.
coming. Oh
I
my
am
gosh.
good. Thank you so much for having me. That was a
Oh,
wonderful intro. I love the way you're calling in the village because truly we are our brother's keeper
we
and
are.
yeah, it takes a village, right? So let's kind of support each other here. Really excited to be here.
Absolutely. Oh,
Yeah.
it's so great to have you. When you said yes, I was like, woo, I'm so happy. So we're really going to have such a deep conversation tonight.
Yeah.
And yes, we also welcome again, Love Bay family. If you have comments during our chat, please feel free to drop them. So, Simone,
Yes.
our topic is moving from resilience to rest. I
Yeah.
mean, when you think about this topic, like, why does the Love Bay family need to hear this tonight?
I think we need to hear it because often in the Black community specifically,
Mm-hmm.
we hold resilience as a badge of honor. And I
Mm.
do believe that it is to
Yep.
be honored. I truly
Mm-hmm.
do. I think of our ancestors and even
Mm.
the transatlantic slave, and if it weren't for resilience, we wouldn't be here today.
Uh-huh.
However,
Absolutely.
however, I believe we've allowed resilience to now become a part of our day to day. I often call it a
Mm.
resilience lifestyle, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
we're moving from resilience to resilience versus what resilience innately was meant for, which is self trust and growth. Um,
Yes.
and so we remain in survival mode as a result of
Uh-huh.
the in which we hold on to resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's no fault of our own. We live in a world that
Absolutely.
is not protecting a lot of us in many
Yeah.
ways, in Black bodied people.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so we do feel as though we have to often fight and push through in order to just feel accepted, in order to
Yep.
feel steady, stable, and
Yep.
sometimes this false sense of protection. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I do believe that there are ways in which we can live more versus exist.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
that is where we find ourselves, is that we're moving from resilience to resilience, which means we remain in survival mode and we're not
Mm-hmm.
resting. We're taking time to ensure that we're well and thrive in this world.
Mm-hmm. I love that you talked about living and not just existing,
Yes.
right? Because I think a lot of us, we do that. We hustle, we grind throughout the day, but are we really living life,
Yeah.
right? So I
Yeah.
know we hear this word resilience a lot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What does resilience mean to you in
To
tonight's
me,
context? Mm-hmm.
yeah. In tonight's context, and what it means to
Mm-hmm.
me is the ability often to bounce back from hard or difficult experiences,
Mm-hmm.
the ability to kind of move from that experience into a place of, um, n- making things normal again, or
Yeah.
feeling more stable. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think, again, the challenge with that sometimes, especially in the context of the Black body, is that we use it so often
Yeah.
that we're not allowing ourselves to use it in a healthy way. Um,
Yes.
way that, like I said, moves us from fight to fight, from pushing through to pushing through, um,
Yes.
versus using it and reframing it so that we are being more resilient towards our wellness, being more resilient to living this life, being
Mm-hmm.
more resilient towards finding meaningful connections
Yeah.
and things that truly allow us to thrive, right?
Absolutely.
So that's what resilience means to me. And again,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a bad thing. I do think
Yeah.
we have to grab for it, you know.
Yes.
I just don't think it needs to be the armor that we use day to day,
Mm,
uh,
absolutely.
because then we're missing out on so very much of this life that we've been gifted.
Absolutely. I find that right now, especially in wellness circles, uh, resilience and rest has been like the theme that
Yeah,
is coming up everywhere. And so I'm like,
yeah,
okay, clearly this is a theme that is being shouted across, like from the rooftops, that we need to rest. We
yeah.
need to rest. Why do you think it's loud now? Why is it so loud?
I think it's loud now because so one of the things that you mentioned earlier
Hmm.
is that I do a lot of training, workshop,
Yeah.
leadership coaching. And
Yeah.
oftentimes I do talk about resilience because I'm so passionate about it. And when I ask folks, well, what does resilience mean to you? Resilience mean to you? Or what's the first thing
Hmm.
that comes up when I say the word resilience? And
Yeah.
without fail, majority of the people in there that identify as Black say
Hmm.
tired, exhausted, right? They're done. They're
Hiya.
like, me done. Like they're just
Yeah.
like like life feels like it's not my own. It's this
Yeah.
burden, right? And
Mm.
so there is, I think, an uptake in mental health in general, and the
Yeah.
understanding of it, and why we need to check in on ourselves. And I think people are just exhausted. They're recognizing that this exhaustion isn't just from hard work, but likely it's this emotional fight that we're also under, the mental emotional fight that we're experiencing due to like anti-Black racism, right?
Mhm.
It's the
Mhm.
understanding that we're working so hard just for nothing really in the end.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
The ideas that's been passed down to us out of survival. People are done just surviving. They want
Yeah.
more out of this life. I think that's what the call is for. That's
Yeah.
why people are waking up to this idea. um,
Mhm.
and so people want to rest. They don't know necessarily what that is or how to
Yeah.
do it. And so they're also conflicted with, how do I actually do this rest thing, because I only have so much time in a day, but I have to go to my second job, or I have to
Absolutely.
children, or my understanding of rest means lazy. All of
Yes.
battles to even get to the idea of giving ourselves permission to rest is a battle
Mhm.
in itself.
Yes, absolutely.
This is what I'm hearing, seeing, and observing. And I'm
Yes,
sure you've kind of come across the same thing, whether with your clients
absolutely.
or not, right?
Mhm.
As Black
Mhm.
women, I've also
Yes.
been like, yeah, I'm tired, I'm done, my body a breakdown. Like it's we gotta do
Yes.
something different here because this ain't it,
Yeah, yes.
right?
And I love that you talk about that we have to do something different. And I think you hit something really powerful, right? Because obviously, like our first response is, well, I'm tired, right?
Mhm.
And it goes beyond just a physical exhaustion. And
Absolutely.
if you could just dig a little bit deeper with regards to this exhaustion, because you talked about the emotional, the mental, the physical. Like, what does exhaustion look like? Because I feel like that may be why some of us feel so guilty, right?
Yeah.
And we feel like we're not allowed to rest.
Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
exhaustion looks like so many things.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm even like tempted to go into like burnout
Yeah.
as the ways to kind of explore
Hmm.
exhaustion, which is this
Yeah.
long standing exposure to stress. And you begin
Hmm.
to perhaps have apathy towards those that you're close to. Or, for
Yeah.
instance, if you work somewhere and you work with clients, you may have less kind of empathy for them,
Yeah.
your ability to focus, your sleeping
Yes.
patterns, your self
Yes.
care. It's all out of whack, right? So
Hmm.
exhaustion typically looks like someone who has like zero boundaries, really,
Mhm,
when it
mhm.
comes to the ways in which they're spending their time. They're often giving so much to everyone else that they're left on
Yeah,
empty. Oftentimes they come off of work and they literally have zero energy to do anything except lay down and sleep, or just lay down. And sometimes you're not sleeping, but you just can't
yeah.
move, right? Um,
Mhm,
it's a physical symptoms, it's mental symptoms, it's emotional symptoms.
mhm.
There's so many things that we often lose out on because of exhaustion. And so
Yeah,
back to this idea of just existing versus
mhm.
living this life, exhaustion often looks like someone who's just existing, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you so much for breaking that down for us, right? As you were sharing, I was thinking about, what happens to a car when you don't put no gas in it, right?
That's right. That's
It's
right.
not only breaks down, but it actually damages some of
That's
the crucial. I'm not going to pretend I'm a mechanic because I'll shame myself, but
right.
I
Yes.
know it will brook up some way, in some
Yeah.
way, shape, or form that can actually do more long-term damage, right?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And so the wear and tear, right, on
Yeah.
your body becomes real. And that's when, for Black folks, you see that we have hypertension is very high, diabetes is very high. These chronic
Hmm.
illnesses, the level of physical ailments that we have,
Yeah.
sometimes, oftentimes, is a result of the level of stress that we're taking on. And now I want
Hmm.
to once again state that, like, there is real stress that we're
Of
experiencing, not
course.
just on an individual level, right? When we
Yeah.
think about anti-Black racism
Hmm.
and racial trauma, the experiences where our Blackness is being rejected, denied, or
Yes.
ridiculed,
Hmm.
that stress is often being held, and the survival response is us to do things like work 10 times harder.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
hypervigilance, it manifests sometimes as the hypervigilance. So when we talk about dining while Black, or we talk about walking across a police station, and we have this like angst to run when we've done nothing wrong.
Hmm.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of trauma and experiences that we're holding on to that we have yet to explore and release, that would then put us in a state where we're feeling more stable. And so it's not just because we're not doing the work and we're just stressed out people. Like, this is coming
Yeah.
from somewhere, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like our environment is everything,
Yes.
right? Like even in our work, as you know, Simone, like if we're doing work in therapy, but the person's environment continues to be toxic, it undoes a lot of the work we do in the therapy room.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
right? So
Absolutely.
all of this does have an impact, like you're saying, right? So when you're going to work or when you're just living and existing in society, but it still doesn't feel safe, it does have an impact.
It does have an impact. And that's why oftentimes when I'm talking about rest, I
Mhm.
talk about it as a form of resistance, right?
Mm, go there, go right there. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, because at the end of the day, right, we know that colonization is real. We know
Yeah,
that anti-Black racism is real. And that
yeah,
means that the things that they put in place, whether it's the systems, whether it's
yeah,
the way people interact with us, the microaggressions that we experience every day, whether it's the way we've begun to internalize racism, being
mm,
able to rest from the noise, being able to sit still and begin to trust self, being able to say, you know what, I am going to enjoy the things that are natural to my origin, my ancestry, being able to
yes,
connect with your people to gain strength and community and live in what we say is Ubuntu, right? I am
mhm,
because we are the African
yeah,
being able to truly be the village that shows up for one another, where we could lean on each
yes,
other, right? But pouring each other as well. I mean,
mm,
these things ensures that we're not working with their agenda, but we're working against it,
yeah,
right? And taking care of ourselves is a big part of that, because what's
yes,
happened is so much of it has become internalized, so much of it we've normalized as this is
yes,
the way things are supposed to be when they're not, right? We've all been gifted this life, yet some people, for some reason, are able to live it and others are not. That's not the way things were supposed to be. And
no,
part of that is us being able to rest. And I would love for us to get into the different ways that we can
yeah,
rest. Um,
yes,
because
please,
it's not just physical, but I think when we consider how we are taking care of ourselves, how we're
yes,
beginning to know ourselves, love ourselves in
yeah,
ways that honors our blackness, whatever that means, because it's so many different beautiful things. It
mhm,
allows us to not just sit and settle in the residue or the yuck that is anti-Black racism, but allows us
mhm,
to fight against it in a way that actually isn't damaging. And it doesn't mean you can't get angry, you can't get loud, because I think that is also necessary. And every emotion
absolutely,
is a good emotion, it's information. Um,
yes,
but sometimes we forget that we need to start with us in that healing process.
mhm,
If racism is gone tomorrow, we're still left with the pain and the wounds of that. So what do you
absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
Right.
So, you know, we hear this word called rest thrown around. You need to get some rest. But do we actually know what rest means? Because
Yeah.
I think a lot of us, when we talk about rest, we think about, oh, I need to go sleep,
Yeah.
or oh, let me go lay down, or let me go sit down. But
Yeah.
rest is so much more nuanced. So I'm gonna pass this torch to you, right? What
Yeah.
does rest actually mean?
I have many words to describe rest, and I would love to
Yeah,
hear your thoughts on it too,
of
especially as a
course.
therapist, right?
Yeah.
But when I think of rest, I think of restoration, right?
Mm,
Coming
mhm,
back to self,
mhm.
replenishing. I think of replenishing, right? The
Yes.
ways in which you, because a lot of us are consistently pouring out, but are you pouring back in and or allowing others to pour back into you, right? I believe it's
Mhm,
an act of self-love, self-care. I believe it's an act of honoring oneself. It's a way
mhm.
for us to find stability and balance in our life. It's in a
Yes.
way for us to feel aligned to who
Mhm,
are or what it is that we're to do in this world, because I know that we're not here just for ourselves, but in honoring rest for ourselves, we're honoring our ability to do the thing that we're supposed to be doing on this earth, whatever that is.
absolutely.
um,
Yes.
so those are the words that I would use to say, to describe rest. It's a very sacred thing, because it's really us taking care of ourselves so that we
Yes.
show up even better in this world, that the way that we ought to show up. um,
Absolutely.
and allows us to be better neighbors and ancestors and mothers
Yeah.
and friends and sisters, all the things,
Mhm.
because we are much more present. We're
Yes.
much more attuned to ourselves, and thus
Yes.
attuned to others as well.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think for me, rest is sacred. And I think that it's not one particular thing, because what rest what rest looked like for me 10, 20 years ago, I could
Yes.
tell you it looks different for me today. But
Absolutely.
it's literally a form of connectedness, of
Yes.
feeling grounded, of
Yes.
feeling like you mentioned, feeling restored, you know,
Yes.
making room for
Yeah.
other things by just being,
Yeah.
you know.
Absolutely.
I just went on a staycation with my family, and
Yes.
we were on this boat cruise in Tobermory. Shout out to Tobermory, okay? And I don't know what it was about this, but the freshness of the air, and
Wow.
then ever so often the water would splash up on this little boat cruise. And then the beauty of the water and the landscape, the greenery. There was just something that set my soul at
Yeah.
ease.
Yeah. It's a
And I
beautiful
could
thing.
tell you that was a 90-minute boat cruise, but I felt so refreshed after this boat cruise. I was like, I need to do it again. It was
Yes.
so great, right? And something
Absolutely.
like that made me actually feel even more rested. The more I
Yeah.
took in that air was the
Yes.
more I exhaled all the stress I was feeling in my shoulders and the tension in my body. Even something as simple as that
Yeah. Because you were
is
present.
rest.
You're
Hmm.
present in a different way, and you're also able to like
Yes.
release yourself of probably the busyness that you consistently have, right? And
Yes.
that stillness time is just so powerful. Um,
Absolutely. And we have someone from the audience that says, rest is to relax and clear your mind. Thank you so much, Dudley.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So there's 7 types of rest.
Yes.
Um, and if you want, we could go into that now.
Yeah, please.
There's a Dr. Saunders Smith. I hope I got
Mm-hmm.
that right. I unfortunately, I'm so bad at names, but she's a Black woman, a doctor who herself, of course,
Mm-hmm.
experienced burnout
Yeah.
and began to study this idea of rest, recognizing for even herself that it was just not adequate enough to sleep, right? It was not
Yeah.
adequate enough for her to just lay down and think that that was what was going to help her recover. And so
Mm,
there's a lot of research around this idea of rest and what might restore, what might, bring her back to this place of balance and, feeling
mm-hmm.
herself again. And she
Yeah.
was able to come up with these seven types of rest. Um,
Mm.
and I brought my phone out here just so I could read off because I could always remember up to 6, but never beyond that for some reason. It's like I
Oh,
always
that's
forget
all
one
right.
to make sure. So the different types of rest are social rest,
Mm-hmm.
creative rest,
Mm-hmm.
sensory rest,
Yep.
spiritual rest,
Mm-hmm.
emotional rest, mental rest, and physical rest.
Mm.
Right?
Can you
And
say that again for our Love Bay family? Because I have a feeling some people are scratching it down and they probably
absolutely,
didn't get all of them.
absolutely, absolutely. So there's social rest,
Mm-hmm.
there's creative rest,
Mm-hmm.
sensory rest,
Yes.
spiritual rest,
Mm-hmm.
emotional rest,
Mm-hmm.
mental rest, and physical rest.
Amazing.
Um, and this doctor, she has an incredible book that is out that talks about rest and the importance of it. She has a really
Mm-hmm.
amazing TED talk that talks about it. And she has even created this quiz that you could take to understand perhaps where in this, spectrum of rest are you lacking most, because oftentimes that's maybe where you need to start, or
Yeah.
maybe you start where it's easiest to start depending
Yeah.
on what your situation is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but when I think about these 7 types, when I first came across it, I said, this makes so much sense. Um,
Yes.
and I don't know, but it seems like it's going to be a theme today where I keep saying this idea of living versus existing.
Yes.
Because I think sometimes when we become an adult, we believe
Mm-hmm.
that our responsibility, for instance, if we have children, is to mind our kids, go to work, come home, take care of the home, for
Yeah.
instance, right? We don't think about the other parts of ourselves that are so important, like that creative rest.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure a lot of people on the show today,
Mm-hmm.
they might have a faith and that spiritual rest.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people could speak to that spiritual rest, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
prayer, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
worship songs, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's meditating on the word,
Yeah.
whatever it might
Yes.
be. But
Yeah.
the one that we often forget as adults is that creative rest, that thing that
Mm.
brings out some black joy,
Yes.
tap back into that, and
Mm.
because it releases these hormones that we often are
Yeah.
not accessing, that helps repair our mind, our body, our emotions. Um,
Absolutely.
but all of these are parts of us that really helps us feel much more whole and exist,
Yeah.
and not just exist, right?
Yes, absolutely. Why don't we start even just breaking down some of these, right? So
Sure.
you started off with social rest. What
Yes.
does social rest look like?
So that could look like many things. One of the things,
Mhm.
and I actually do say it, besides God, maybe this is one of the most inexpensive, much but fruitful, enriching healing
Mhm.
tools, which is community connection,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
How are you connecting with people that fill you up, that
Yeah.
allow you to feel alive, allow you to feel yourself, allows you
Yes.
to feel all your authentic self? Because once again, sometimes
Mhm.
many of us will work in places that we don't feel we could be our full self. We don't feel we could wear our hair a particular way. We can't talk a certain way. We feel
Mhm.
silent. We feel like
Yes.
we're an imposter. And so being able to fill ourselves up with individuals that really make us feel whole is important. But also,
Mhm.
similarly, we need to be careful of being around people that drain us, right?
Girl, yes, go there.
People that, the people that have no boundaries, the people that
Yeah.
feel like we're less than, the people that or experiences, maybe it's not people, maybe it's even experiences that just don't make us feel connected to ourselves very
Yeah.
much. This is social rest, and I really
Yeah.
believe our connections are so important to our overall life and healing and
Yeah.
wellness. But that's what social rest might look like.
Absolutely. And thank you, Icon. Good morning to you too. Thank you so much for your encouragement. He's like, "Good morning, beautiful people. You are doing well." From Lagos, Nigeria. Yeah. Simone, when you were talking about, social rest,
Yeah.
right? Um, and the fact that sometimes there's some situations or people that may make us feel drained, that is definitely something that I see pop up in the therapy room, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to realize that not everybody fills your tank. There's some people that will withdraw from
Yeah.
you and
Yeah.
they don't tap back in and pour back in.
Yeah.
And so you have to be strategic about who you're giving your energy to and knowing the difference, right? Because a lot of times we don't know the difference. Then we're like, why do I feel so drained after talking to this person?
Yeah.
Right? And they may be a good person, it has nothing to do with them as a human. But
Absolutely.
sometimes, it's just their vibe, their energy can be draining for you.
Yeah.
And, I think as I think about this piece on social rest, it's not about going out to like a party with 100 people, and because that's not life-giving for everyone. For some people that would be life-giving because
Yeah.
that's their vibe, but for some it's just the one or the two people that really pour in and really help to fill your tank,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? So have you seen this in the therapy room where you find where, maybe some of your clients might feel more drained and exhausted? What would you say to them as it pertains to social rest?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen it. And I think one of the things that often we talk about, depending on the situation, is
Mhm.
boundaries, right? I think that there's a lot of us who, for a variety of reasons, remain in relationships that don't feel positive, don't feel
Mhm.
reciprocal, don't feel healthy. Or
Mhm.
maybe they are great people, but like you said, they just drain you. And so sometimes
Yeah.
it's not about the relationship being unhealthy, but perhaps there's just no understanding between the two of you around how you would love the relationship to look, right?
Yeah.
I think about the client, for instance, the strong Black woman, for instance,
Yes.
who often is the one that's pouring out to people all the time, but isn't pouring into herself. And what's interesting about that is often she's not giving people the opportunity to pour into her. So
Whoops. I said
uh,
whoops.
yep,
Whoops. Whoops.
right.
Uh-oh.
She's learned.
Hey.
Uh-huh. She's learned she's learned how to be the strong one. That's a part of her identity. That's a part of her makeup, right?
Yeah.
And so the challenge there is maybe twofold, maybe three, four, fivefold. But if we were
Yeah.
to talk about some of the challenges there, it's that
Yeah.
maybe the boundary would be that, she lets them know that, when we're in a conversation, would love to talk about myself as well. I would love for you to check in on me more. But that also means that that strong woman has to be vulnerable enough to say, I need help too, or I'm also struggling, so that it creates more space and opportunity for them to both have a conversation, right? I don't think boundaries, when people often talk about boundaries, I think sometimes it's way out of context. And I think every relationship requires a different approach to boundaries. And so, for instance, in this
Mhm.
case where you're trying to maintain the relationship, it's a healthy one, and it's really that there's just an imbalance in how we're checking in on one another. It's
Yeah.
about just being vulnerable and, direct about what you're wanting, what your needs are, and that
Yeah.
person hopefully then reciprocating that, and you guys finding a new rhythm of how
Yeah.
you kind of connect with each other, right? Sometimes it's as simple
Mhm.
as that. Like, some things aren't that, like, we make things so big and terrible, and it's like most people just really require understanding. And no, people
Yeah.
don't just get it, and they don't just know. You have to tell people that you're in relationship with, and it doesn't matter how long you
Absolutely.
have it. So that would be one simple example, uh,
Yes.
but one common one that I often see.
Hmm. So letting people know about your needs,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
Absolutely. So we do have another question. Oh, well, first, Icon, congratulations on your beautiful baby girl. Congratulations from the Love Bay family. We also have a question here in the chat from Jarvis from Toronto, and they're asking about mental rest. And I know that was one of the 7 types of rest.
Yeah.
So, how would you describe mental rest?
Oh, girl. So mental
Mm.
rest.
Hmm.
mental
Hmm.
mental rest could look like so many things once again.
Yeah.
And I would say it's about, how do you kind of keep your focus? We talk about mindfulness, for instance,
Yeah.
in therapy, where you allow yourself to kind of just be present and still and focused on maybe one task, one thing, staying present, and
Mm.
allowing yourself to just almost breathe mentally from the millions of things that you're likely kind of ruminating on, or that's kind of going through your mind, your head, right?
Mhm.
It's allowing your rest literally to mind from the overthinking, from maybe sometimes the work that you're doing. And so one of the ways that people might do that is even taking little micro breaks, right? So
Yeah.
when we're in office, oftentimes people work right through, they'll even skip their lunch break. And doing
Mhm.
little things like taking the actual 15-minute break, not just
Mhm.
an
Mhm.
hour break, going for a walk, allowing yourself to take in nature, as an example,
Mm.
would be an example of mental rest. Absolutely, it's
Mhm.
important. I think a lot of us spend way too much time up there. I will also say that journaling is another great way to mental rest, because
Mhm.
so yes, you're kind of using your thoughts to um, support you in that moment. You're
Mm.
creating this space of stillness where you're
Yeah.
focused on the writing, and you're releasing, you're externalizing, right? So it's
Mhm.
not all just staying up here and moving around. It's really kind of a bit of a release of you
Mm.
sitting with the many thoughts in your head, and it going nowhere. So that would
Absolutely.
be another great way to mental rest. But yeah, it's
Mhm.
mhm.
Absolutely. Because when I think about those moments where the brain is just heavy, like
Yeah,
there's nothing else that I can describe it other than this heaviness,
yeah,
where it just feels like it's unable to come down.
Yeah.
And it has such a ripple effect on everything, clarity
Abs-
of thought, even
Absolutely.
sleep. Because when your
Absolutely.
mind goes and goes and goes, you're there up in the middle of the night under your covers, like thinking everything through, and our brain can't come down,
Yeah.
right? And
Yes.
so it's so important to have that mental break. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, Simone. Um, and also you as well, Jarvis. Thank you so much, because I think that sometimes we forget that our mind actually needs a break also,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
And so for all those students out there whose
Mhm.
mind feels, well, you're on break right now, at least in Canada you are, but when the mind starts to get heavier, if you have those big projects, for those of you that work and you're feeling like your brain is just heavy, please get some rest, right? I was
Yeah.
actually wondering if mindfulness is something else that you would recommend, Simone.
Yeah, it's very common to have
Mhm.
mindfulness as one of the ways to like rest your mind.
Yeah,
Um, right. And like I said, it's really about remaining present and focused in the moment.
yeah,
And there's so many ways, so many tools that we use in therapy to support that, right?
yeah.
Whether you're using your body and doing it, whether you
Mhm.
are literally being more intentional with the way you take your walks, right? And
Yeah,
instead of having your earphones in, maybe with music or a reading audible kind of book, maybe you're
mhm.
just listening for the birds that are chirping, right? Or
Yeah,
sit by the water. And that's the most common thing for me, sitting by the water.
yeah,
I don't get to do enough
yeah,
um in this cold weather, but if sitting by the water and just
yeah,
watching the waves kind of go by, and
yeah,
you to listen to the air pass your ears, and
yeah,
those things really are calming. It supports the nervous system in so many ways,
yes,
because you're grounding yourself, you're allowing yourself the release and the relief
yeah,
of constant like chaos that's often happening for many of us, really, um,
absolutely.
in different ways. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I know that this is She Speaks. So I want to talk to all the mothers out there. Sometimes you need a mental break.
Yes.
Kids be crying and screaming, and yes, of course we're nurturing, but sometimes it feels too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell your partner, or tell someone in your community and social network that I just need a couple minutes of quiet. I need a mental break, because
Mhm.
I think a lot of times we feel guilty when we are, especially when you have young children, and it's sensory overload,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
you just need that time to take care of you, even if it's just a few minutes,
Even a few minutes. Yeah.
right? All right. So let's see, because I wrote them all down. So I
Yeah.
want to make sure I hit all of them. So let's talk about creative rest, because
Yeah.
I think that that is one of the unique ones that you don't hear a lot about. And
Yeah.
so what does you like creative rest actually look like for us?
It could look like, again, so I like to say things could look like many things, because I don't think to put it in a box and say it's just this one thing is helpful.
Yes.
I
Hmm.
also think it's important, especially, I'm a therapist that comes from a very culturally responsive kind of framework. And I think that being able to incorporate our culture into the ways in which we heal is important, and it's necessary.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when we, even as therapists, are taught how do we support folks with grounding and finding rest and whatnot, we're always giving them these tools that are very westernized. And
Hmm.
there's nothing wrong with them per se, but it doesn't always feel like connection to us, right? It doesn't feel
Yeah.
aligned. And so when I think of creative rest, it literally is your ability to give yourself permission to play, your ability
Hmm.
to give yourself permission to be creative. A lot of our people love to dance and love to sing,
Yeah.
right? And how often do we just enjoy taking 10 minutes out of our day, just dancing and moving around to some of our music? I mean, we just had Toronto Caravana this long weekend.
Yes.
I got a bit of some creative rest this weekend, I'm sure.
Yeah.
With all the dancing and whatnot, but it
Yeah.
helpful to our bodies to be able to move and move in ways that really makes us feel connected to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And then again, I think about us when we were children. In therapy, we talk about the inner child,
Yes.
and in so many ways, we use the inner child as a way to kind of soothe ourselves and support
Mm,
ourselves and repair wounds that we've
yeah.
experienced. And one
Yeah.
of the things I often ask folks is like, well, what was your younger self doing
Yeah.
when they wanted to play? What was the thing that lit them up, that made them feel joyous, that made them feel alive, right?
Yeah.
Can you revisit that as an adult or as a teenager or whatever age you are currently, and maybe it doesn't look the exact same, but for some it could look the exact same. There's some people that are very artistic. When's the last time you sat down and just colored in a book, or that you drew
Yeah.
a painting, right?
Mm-hmm.
When's the last time that you played those those games that we play in the field, right? Like, what's that one again? I can't remember, but there's so
Mm-hmm.
many different games that we played growing up, and some of us, yeah, maybe we feel like our body can't handle some of it. That's fine. We can adjust it.
Of
But
course.
there's just so many ways that we can be creative, and I think this is a really great way to incorporate our culture as part of
Yeah.
that, because our culture is so creative, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's the singing, the dancing, the art, like how do we engage
Yes.
in that part of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
It's just so mundane a lot of times the way we live this life. Um,
Absolutely.
and I'm not saying, it doesn't have to be an everyday thing, but I do think to intentionally experience joy and happiness is
Mm,
it's not something that a lot of us, especially as adults, do often.
yeah.
And what kind of life is that if we're not allowing ourselves to feel those emotions, like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
experience, you know?
Because it's still there.
Absolutely.
And maybe it's just a misconception that once you become a big person, you're not allowed to have fun, or you're not allowed to experience that kind of joy anymore. But that inner child is still there.
It's still there. And I think, to be fair, I do also have clients who, like clients in therapy, those who I serve in
Yes.
therapy, who their childhood wasn't the greatest. And so the
Mm-hmm.
idea of play is actually quite foreign to them.
Yes.
And
Yep.
it's brought
Mm,
such stress to them. And so I've done a lot of work in,
yes.
helping folks like experience this
Mm,
part of themselves, that yeah, you can
yeah.
enjoy life. It doesn't have to be work work
Yes.
work all the time, or responsibilities all the time, and you could still play
Mm,
responsibly. But I do think that there's something to be said about many who have had to grow up much faster than they should
mm,
have,
yeah.
who just didn't have great childhood experiences, and
Mm,
recognizing that, again, reclaiming that part of yourself is
mhm.
also quite important, I think, to the journey. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that speaks to that restoration piece, that even though, maybe your childhood was difficult and you didn't really get to experience that childlike part of yourself, it's not too late.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. So,
Absolutely.
so there's hope.
Yeah.
We have a question from Adele from Hamburg, Germany. And they said that some people take vacation out of their environments to rest, but return and complain about not having rested. How
Yes.
may one address this, please? All right,
I
I'm
love
throwing that one at you, girl.
Yes, and I love this question because a lot of the folks that I do serve, once again in therapy, do like to take a vacation and call that self care, right? Because
Hmm.
even rest in itself is self care, it's self love,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
The thing is, a lot of people that are saying they're self caring or self loving really
Hmm.
are just self maintaining, right?
Ooh.
And
Say that again. Say that again. Repeat that part. Come on.
a lot of people that say they're self-caring and they're self-loving are really just self-maintaining. Um,
Mm,
and when we understand the depths of self-care, it's
yes.
not surface level. It really is this experience that allows us to build trust in ourselves and grow, right? It's an experience that allows us to see ourselves and our world maybe differently, So the ways in which we show up, we talked about boundaries earlier. It's one of the things that you may begin to utilize as a way to keep yourself well. And going on a trip just makes you escape the trouble that's here. If the only reason that you're going, or the only ways in which you're using that vacation, is to escape, right? So this is why people come back and they don't feel as rested. But also sometimes people go out there and they do the most. And then they think, and then they come back unrested. But what I will say is, if you're going on vacation, that is totally fine. But are you using the time to, for instance, spiritually rest? Because I was someone who used to
Yes.
vacation a lot, but I will say one of the ways in which I used my vacation was I allowed myself to connect with God so much more.
Yeah.
I was intentional
Mhm.
about the ways I was on my beach days and how
Yeah.
I used that. And I used a solo trip as well. And so it
Yeah.
allowed me the space to just kind of create my own stillness time, be on the beach, and connect in that way. So I felt much more aligned with myself when I came back. It wasn't just that I
Mhm.
went away, escaped my environment, and came back. And so I
Yes.
think if you're going to vacation, the intentionality around how you rest and what you were requiring, right,
Mhm.
is what you need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And also, you can, if you're not doing the thing that you need to do in order to feel rested while you're here,
Mhm.
it doesn't, it won't matter, because again, when
Absolutely.
you're kind of creating this false sense of release and relief and relaxation and rest, um,
Mhm.
that isn't deep. Um,
Yes.
in that it would really translate, to wellness when you come back home.
Absolutely. So
Right.
what I'm hearing is that it can't be surface level. Even
No.
when we take a vacation, right? We
Yeah,
still have to make sure that self-care is holistic and it
exactly.
goes beyond just a trip.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the trip can be a part of it, but again, what are you doing before the trip? What are you doing after the trip? What are you doing during
Yes.
the trip? That's going to
Hmm.
deepen the ways in which you're taking care of yourself, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, what might feel restful for some people on the trip might not feel restful for other people. So if you're traveling in a group, you also have to respect your personal boundary. If you need to sleep in the morning, but
Yes.
the individuals you're traveling with are early birds, it's
Yeah,
okay to say, you know what, y'all go ahead. I will find myself breakfast. I'm going to sleep in, right?
yeah,
So I
yeah.
think there's different factors as to, why maybe on a vacation you come back feeling
Like you
even
need
more
to.
tired, right? Because your
Yeah,
itinerary might be too full and not
ab-
allow for that reconnection, right?
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
Hmm. Amazing, but great question, Adele.
yeah. Good question.
Amazing. So you touched on this just a while ago, the spiritual rest. Why
Yeah,
is spiritual rest important, and what does that look like, or what can it look like
yeah.
for our Love Bay family?
Well, I think it's gonna look different for people depending on whether they are maybe connected to like a faith, a
Mhm.
spirituality, etc.,
Yeah,
versus those who don't. But I think oftentimes when we think of spirituality, it's this connection to something bigger than us,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's connected to maybe purpose,
yeah.
right? Like why we're here, why
Mhm.
am I doing the things that I do? Like it's often connected to that. Sometimes for people, it's connected to someone that is bigger than them, like God,
Mhm.
right? Like it's
Yeah.
connected to something outside of ourselves and is really important. And so when we are able to align ourselves back to that, it gives
Mhm.
us perspective. It allows us to maybe sit more in our values and operate in our core values a bit more. It allows us to check in
Yeah.
with ourselves. It also sometimes takes the burden off of us and how we operate in this world. It gives us guidance. It gives us a place to land that doesn't feel like we have to do it on our own. I know for myself, that is absolutely what it looks like. And so things like prayer, right,
Yeah.
is one of the things that helps me to release a lot of the tension or stress that I'm experiencing and often feeling very light afterwards. And so I feel like the spiritual rest has like, it has restored me and it makes me feel much more
Mhm.
balanced after the fact, right? For some people,
Absolutely.
it might be the ways in which they serve, they
Mhm.
volunteer as a way to give back to
Mhm.
communities that maybe are unable to support themselves in certain ways.
Mhm.
So again, when we think about even connection to one another, because we're wired for connection, and the
Yes.
ways in which we show for one another, as much as we showing up for others might support them, it supports us too, because there's
Yes.
a bonding that happens. There's again some hormones that are released, oxytocin. Nope, that's not it. The wrong one. Anyways, there's hormones that
Yeah.
are
Mhm.
that are released.
Yes. Endorphins, I believe.
Yes, and that
Yes.
really supports in repairing our brain, our body, all the things. Sorry, guys, I really
That's
probably
okay.
words,
That's
um,
okay.
but it really is important for us to connect with people in these ways,
Yeah.
and it also helps us to not think about ourselves so deeply and
Mm,
think about our own stressors, but think
yeah.
about how we might support others despite kind of what we're going through. And I do believe that in this world, there will be times when we have to sacrifice,
Yeah.
but it shouldn't be all the time, every time,
Yeah.
right? I
Mhm.
do believe that we are each other's keepers. And,
Yes.
one thing that was, I think, mentioned at the top here is that my practice really is grounded in what I call the love
Yeah.
lens. And it's the idea of loving thy neighbor as thyself. And that means
Mhm.
we are to steward the relationships
Yeah.
that we have in this life, some whether
Yeah.
it's people we know or don't know, but it truly can fix so much of the challenges that we have, because we
Yes.
require connection, we require
Yes.
attunement to feel valuable,
Yes.
to feel worthy, to feel seen, safe.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
these are the basic things that we need for our development and wellness, right? Security and safety. Uh,
Mhm.
Outside of like the basic things like food and shelter and water, we
Yeah.
really require safety and security, and we cannot get that from animals. We get, well, maybe we can, I don't know, but we could get that from we get that from other people, essentially,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
Helps us to heal trauma. Healthy relationships help us to heal attachment wounds. It helps us to
Yeah.
heal anxiety, many things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm hearing that, when it comes to human connection, that in and of itself is also healing, as well as that spiritual connection
Absolutely.
of, right, that it really helps us to see things from a different perspective, right? So it helps us to step out of our situation and focus on the bigger picture, or God, or whoever the spiritual being is in your life, right? um yeah, I love that you talked about the human connection piece. As you were sharing, I'm a very visual person. I was thinking about like the movie Castaway,
Yeah.
and Mr. Wilson, the ball,
Yes.
that this man try to create this connection with, because as humans we need connection. And I know that it's fiction,
Yeah.
right? But maybe we could talk a little bit about that piece and why it's restful. Because I know we talked a little bit about the social rest earlier, but I think you made a good point. We need to connect with other humans.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to connect with other humans. We need to feel seen, and from the time that we're birthed.
Yes,
We
yes,
are searching for connection,
yeah,
right? Whether it's the tone of the mother, the tone of the baby, the tears that drop, all these things were
yeah,
built in us so that we will connect with one another, because we truly are to be one another's keeper, one another's support,
yeah.
one another's neighbor, right? It takes a
Mhm.
village, it like all these sayings that we've had, ancestrally, right? All the things
Yes,
we've often done as communities that sometimes the Western world is just kind of getting a hold of. We've
yeah,
known this to be our strength, right?
mm,
And so even the idea
yeah,
of resilience, it was never that people were resilient by themselves. They were usually resilient with others, right?
yes,
Um,
yes.
there was a level of community connection that really has been the strength to all the hardship,
Mm,
which is why I say maybe we don't wear resilience as a badge of honor, but we absolutely honor it, right?
yeah,
Recognize how do we then allow ourselves to reframe resilience as a way to fight towards our wellness and the wellness of others, versus
mm,
fight and move through life and just exist,
Yeah.
because I believe that all of us require the support of one another to get through these difficult times. And no,
Yeah.
it's not easy to always find somebody, but I do believe when we rest
Mhm.
even one person and we develop the relationships necessary to feel seen, valued, safe, it makes such a
Mhm.
difference in how we are able to rest and how we're able to see ourselves, see the
Mhm.
world, see one another, and just show up differently in this world.
Yeah.
And we owe it to ourselves to do that. We owe it to ourselves to feel as though we are rested, as
Yeah.
though we are cared for, as though we're loved. And I don't think it
Mhm.
necessarily has to just start with us doing it for ourselves, but
Mhm.
we need to consider ourselves, and we definitely need to do the work to ensure
Mhm.
we do well.
Yes.
Connect that to other people. And what we learn, we should also be teaching to others. It's not,
Mhm.
shouldn't just be staying in the one place. We should be, this is where generational healing happens as well.
Yes. Yes.
What we begin to learn, we pass,
Mm.
instead of the trauma, we pass on the healing. How
Mhm.
amazing would that be, right?
Mhm.
So you're not doing it for you now, right?
Yes.
You do it for your future self. Do it
Yes.
for your future children, your future niece, your future nephew.
Absolutely.
I also think that even those that went before us could change. And a lot of
Mm.
them also require rest still in ways that they
Mm.
experience, because they've had to fight. They've had to
Mm.
feel as though they had to push through and they didn't know anything else. But, a lot of us are learning things differently now. How are we using that information to ensure we
Yeah.
as a community are better? Not
Absolutely.
just us,
Mm.
not just the one person, but how are we ensuring that our community is better as a result of the information we're now learning? Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I I love how you've also shifted our perspective that it's not just about us. It's about our community. It's about our next generation, right? And we want to pass on this legacy of healing,
that's it.
right? But it starts with us,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
right? I know that you talked about emotional rest.
Yeah.
What can that look like? And what does that mean? What does that mean? Yes.
I think emotional rest is such a
Mhm.
tricky one, and truly we could, I mean, I think for all of them we could just do a whole show on that. But I will say that as Black folks, a lot of us have not had access to a lot of the emotions that many other people express. And it's a
Mm.
very complicated thing because our history has made it so that we don't emote in certain ways, because if we did, that might mean that we get beaten. That might mean that we are facing some kind of harm, right? When we think historically, colonization, slavery, etc.
Mhm.
Then we also began to adopt like this way of survival into the ways in which we parent, the ways in which we connect with one another, in that we have to be strong,
Mhm.
can't cry, we can't be weak, we can't show all these emotions, because then
Yeah.
it's something about us that's negative. And so
Yeah.
I'm saying all that because I believe that one of the first things that might help us emotionally rest as Black folks is to first give ourselves permission to feel all the feelings, to feel
Mhm.
emotions, to get comfortable, acquainted with them, because we were built with all of them.
Yeah.
And really what emotions are, they are signals and they're information to something. And the
Mhm.
less we access them, the less we allow ourselves to experience them, is the harder it becomes to manage them, right?
Mhm.
Emotional rest would look like us giving ourselves permission to express our emotions, the variety of them, and express them in healthy ways, and express
Yes.
them in ways that actually brings about connection. Once again,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Both to ourselves, right? And both and to others. Because it
Mhm.
allows us to say, this is how I'm feeling. Like again, every other human is able to feel these feelings. So why are we not? Why are we,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And again, there's a long history around that, which we only have so much time, but I think it's important that we allow ourselves to feel these things, have the proper outlet maybe to help us explore that. Sometimes therapy is the space, sometimes it's a safe friend or family member.
Yeah.
And yeah, just allow ourselves to experience those emotions in healthy ways, or in
Mm,
ways that it might feel scary, but we could work at it. Um,
absolutely.
yeah,
And
I think
there is no good emotion or bad emotion.
no good or bad emotion. Yeah,
It's all information,
it's all information. That's right.
right? And I think sometimes we shy away from some of the emotions or we try to stuff them down because we feel like we shouldn't be feeling this way. But if you can approach it from a healthy way, it's actually very healthy.
It's very healthy. It's very important too.
Absolutely. We have a question from Bev from Ottawa. They said, great show. Thank you, Bev. Lack of rest and our mental health. Any linkage?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
So, again, if we think about rest in terms of physical rest, whether it's sleeping and whatnot, we know that sleep helps to repair our body and our brain and our immune system in so many ways. And we know that the mind body connection is very much linked. And so, when
Mhm.
we're not resting, whether it's physical rest, emotional,
Mhm.
spiritual, all these things, then we're not aligning ourselves to the things that makes us human, makes us alive, and allows us to exist. And again, when I
Absolutely.
think about the Black body, oftentimes because we're in survival mode versus in this place of thriving and feeling safe and
Mhm.
secure, we are not tapping into a lot of these parts of ourselves that really are there to help us feel balanced and alive
Mhm.
and healthy and well. So whether it is the physical rest, whether it's the emotional rest, whether it's the creative rest, our brain is, you know, our brain, there's a part of our brain that is made for that creative part of our life, right? So there's
Mhm.
even parts of ourselves we're not even using. So what's going to happen when you're not using certain parts of your body? It's
Yeah.
going to break down. It's not going to feel accessible. You're not going to have any kind of connection to it. And of course, it's going to impact your mental, emotional wellness,
Absolutely.
because that means your whole self is not operating the way it's supposed to,
Yeah.
right? So that's the
Yeah.
emotional pieces. All of it's very linked. And so these parts are extremely important to our mental wellness for sure.
Absolutely. And a lot of times when people are experiencing like depression or anxiety, a lot of times it's because we're just burnt to a crisp. We're
That's
not
it.
sleeping, we're overworked, and when we don't take care of ourselves, it shows up in different ways, whether it's our emotions or our physical selves, right? And so it's so important to consider rest because it really truly is all connected.
It's all connected. Yeah, 100%.
100%. Did I miss anything? We did social rest, creative
Yep.
rest, sensory
Sensory
rest.
rest. So yeah, sensory rest is like, for all my folks out there that are often on the devices, on the Instagrams, the LinkedIn, the YouTubes,
Yeah.
all the things, right? Like, and even television, right?
Hmm.
Like, I think sometimes we need to, again, remove ourselves from that kind of overload, because it often is an overload. That is
Yes.
like a distraction to our bodies and our minds and
Yes.
kind of what we're filling ourselves with. And so being able to
Yeah.
detach from those things are really, really important.
Yes.
So that's what sensory kind of rest is, just taking a break and maybe away from the news, from the social medias, from the television shows,
Hmm.
because it really does something to our brains,
It
our
does.
attention span, our ability to focus.
Hmm.
It does create a lot of like this dopamine fix, but it's like not in a healthy way. This is why
Hmm.
our attention often isn't as great as it used to be.
Yeah.
um, it's really impactful to so many ways that we focus or show up. So sensory, that's that
Yeah.
one. And
Yeah.
I think we went through the rest of them.
Yeah, I think just jumping in on the sensory rest, this different people have different capacities for the sensory.
Mm.
Because, for example, for me, I love a good conference, but after the third day, I don't want nobody to talk to me. I don't want my dog to talk to me. I don't want nobody because my sensory overload is done.
Yeah.
right? And so we have to honor our
Yeah.
capacity,
Yeah.
right? And understand that it's different for everyone, right? So we have to honor that, right? So if you start to feel really agitated and overwhelmed, it's okay to remove yourself from that a little bit and
Yeah.
take care of you.
Yeah. And sit in silence, even, back to that stillness time. I think if nothing else, being able to practice sitting in silence and what I call
Yeah.
stillness time is so important because it offers us an opportunity to really check in with ourselves,
Yeah.
to begin trusting ourselves more, in a world that again often makes us question our blackness, who we are we good enough? Being able to trust that what you experienced was real, or being able to say,
Mhm.
this is not the truth about who I am. Um,
Yeah.
and sitting in the silence around that. And again, checking in with our bodies. How was I feeling today? Because our emotions also are stored in our bodies, and often we don't even know how to recognize that. Um,
Yeah.
and perhaps being able to sit in that and say,
Mhm.
oh, I was feeling a little bit anxious today. I felt it in my chest. And I wonder why
Mhm.
I was feeling that way at what point in time.
Yeah.
The opportunity to build some self trust and safety.
Mm.
Mhm.
So beautiful, Simone. I mean, if you could say anything else to our Love Bay family tonight, what's your closing thoughts?
My closing thoughts. I want to go back to again what I've kind of been saying the whole time, that we deserve to live and not just exist.
Mm,
Resilience absolutely has its place in that it's there's times when we have to fight and we have to push through, but we
mhm.
cannot continue to make it a lifestyle. I think,
Yeah.
and if we do make it so that we're resilient more towards getting well and growing versus
Mhm.
pushing through and surviving.
Yeah.
Um, we're gifted this life and we only have one of them. And so how we use it matters. And
Mm,
part of that is being able to rest.
yeah.
And that rest in whatever way is necessary for you means that you'll be reconnected with self, which means you'll be better reconnected with others oftentimes too. Um,
Yeah.
and we need each other. We need each other to
Yes.
be well. We need each other to thrive. We need each other to really experience this life as it was to be experienced, and that is
Absolutely.
to live it and not just exist in it. And I think that is the final thing that I will say. So move from resilience to rest, y'all.
Yes. Oh my.
Resilience to rest.
Well, you've heard it, Love Bay family. We need to live and not just exist, and we need each other. Thank you so much, Simone, for being on our show tonight, for dropping the wisdom on our first She Speaks episode. It's an honor to have you again. Thank you so
You.
much. Love Bay family, we're in for a treat again. Next week is our Baba Shop Tuesday, so you know what that means. Our panel is back, and we're going to be talking about another deep issue, so please stay tuned. Until next week, peace out.
Bye.